Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
I'm Casey. Charlie.
Cyndi.
And I'm Josh. And Charlie, welcome back aboard.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Today we are going to be going over A Hunger Artist by Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka is one of my favorite writers. We've gone over Metamorphosis, The Metamorphosis, back in Season 4. We went over The Judgment in Season 8. And now we are going over a work from the later part of his career in A Hunger Artist. This was one of the last works that he wrote and published. This was written a few months before his death from TB, which is tuberculosis. The story in particular revolves around a man who entertains people by starving himself for 40 days at a time. My discussion starter is, what do you see as the deeper meaning to The Hunger Artist?
To start off, I think he's doing it. Yes, he's doing it as as an act of maybe self-recollection, self-penance, or whatnot. But he's also doing. I feel he's also doing it. He's doing it to be a show-off, but he's also doing it to humble himself all at the same time. I know that didn't really make too much sense there, but that's what I get at the surface. But I read it again, and I read it once today at work. So excuse me. But when I sat back and reread a piece of it, I said to myself, who in their right mind would want to live for 40 days in a cage? Who would want to live on straw that apparently wasn't changed? There was nothing about it being changed or cleaned. No eating. I mean, I live for food. Food is actually my spirit animal and my astrological sign. So I don't know why this person is doing this. Again,
I don't agree that he was trying to humble himself. I think that may, on the surface, it may be what people are getting at, especially with the 40 days aspect. The one thing, though, with Franz Kafka, there are
not accessible at all.
There are three stages to his writing.
I picked up on that.
There's, in his early days, a lot of his earlier works were father-fearing. Metamorphosis and The Judgment are very prime examples of...
the name like The Judgment, right there.
It's his father-fearing.
Yeah.
There's his seeking religious salvation, which he was often exploring his Judaism. He had his eyes set on Israel before it became such a huge destination for Jewish people. The late 40s is when it really started to pick up. One of the darker ones, which was toward the end, was works that were responding to his tuberculosis, and this one is a prime example because...
I picked up on that a little bit. I didn't know he actually, believe it or not, I did not know he passed of tuberculosis.
When you have tuberculosis, you can't eat.
Yeah.
It's painful.
So I very quickly did what any normal person would do. Google! No, I'm kidding. No, but that's what I did. And symptoms of, I put symptoms of TB, and I get at least 3 sources, so that's just me being a show-off, but no, really. And each one of them can't lack of appetite.
I mean, granted, the subject in this piece at the very end made mention of the fact that this was not difficult for him. He's going to keep starving himself because he couldn't find any food
that was appealing to him.
That was to his appeal, and that if he could find something, he wouldn't hesitate and go right for it.
Yeah.
But that can mean different things. It doesn't just mean that he can't, this is what he can't endure.
I don't like this fish. What is wrong with you? It's the worst fish. Gordon Ramsay, if he was here, probably would, oh my god. No, but I mean really, I like fish, by the way. But then again...
It's also a matter of, I think you can look at it allegorically too, because he's, in a way, shutting himself off from the general population, and the cage is what's keeping him apart from them.
Yeah.
When someone is sick like that, they'll look at him with a sense of curiosity.
The kids, I think, the kids, they even said that the children had no, I'm loosely quoting, classroom training on what they were seeing. That was part of, because their father or mother, because he signed himself to go to a circus, didn't read the terms and conditions of a contract, went and sat next to the animals, because he said that the middle of the circus is for, it's a 3-ring circus, so you figure the middle is the main act. by the clowns, and like myself, a clown out there. He went to the animals, so that's where I see him kind of humbling himself in a way. I could be wrong.
Let's see what Casey and Cyndi got out of this. Bring them in.
Well, I saw something completely different.
Okay.
I thought it was more so the writer making a satire of sideshows. Because even though there were some artists who were born disformed and things of that nature, some of them would just do weird things just to be in a sideshow. And so it seemed like, because he wasn't fasting for religious purposes or because he was protesting, he was fasting purposely to be in this to be seen at, as a sideshow.
I think the 40 days reference, though, is a bit, I think it's intended. It may not necessarily be religious, but
I know, but what I'm saying is it seems like he did that purposely to be in a sideshow. Like, so, because that's why it's called The Hunger Artist. He was purposely not starving himself and putting himself in a cage for entertainment purposes, so to speak, or to be seen, because it seemed like this was a sideshow, so to speak, and he was one of the artists doing things. Because that was the whole point of sideshows, was seeing human beings who were disformed or they were very taller than usual, very smaller than usual, so basically weird humans. And like I said, there were those who were born certain ways, but then there were those who were just doing weird things just to say, hey, I'm in a sideshow. I saw it as him condemning people who do things that they shouldn't, like starve themselves just for the sake of being a sideshow artist. But as you said, I thought that was also, he did the 40 days, and then after 40 days he felt like there was nothing he could eat, even though he was eating prior to that without a problem. Now, after 40 days, he doesn't seem to find anything worthy enough to eat, to the point to where he ends up dying.
He was getting used to that way of living, and
he drank, though, because there was very brief message. He did drink water. Scientifically, you can go how long without food, really? I'm asking.
About 10 days at least.
Okay, I could probably go about 20 minutes before I start tearing up my hair out.
You do need water, though. Right?
Yeah. So he was keeping himself alive by drinking water, but not eating food of any substance. No food. Water and air, that's it. And maybe some sunlight.
But also the fact that he was near animals. It was as if he was saying sideshows are as demeaning as like zoos, because you're making people an attraction as opposed to them being humans.
I mean, this was set up very much. He laid it out as if it was an attraction. The beautiful women that would carry him out after 40 days.
Oh, and the feast they put out for him, or the big table or whatnot.
Yeah, the fact that it was meant to be temptation.
The band, they had a band. You know how hard it is to get a military band to go out and do something?
Do you want to say something, Cyndi?
Now, this is my first reading from this author. So I'm not at all, really have not been familiar with him at all, and my take, might be a little different. I see the character, I'm looking at the character, not necessarily the author, and I'm seeing that this is someone who is fairly obsessed with the attention, and like he wants people to see him, but he wants to be remembered. I don't think it's necessarily trying to humble. It might be a little bit prideful, but that might be just really obvious, because there are times in the story that he talks about how people weren't coming, people weren't going to see him, people weren't going to remember him when he was gone. And I think he knew that ultimately this is not something you can do without paying the ultimate price of dying, because if you are never eating or eating a bite here and there, you're not going to sustain yourself. I like what you said about the 40 days thing. That has spiritual significance, but I think that's just why the writer put that in there, is because that's like an extreme fast.
And the writer, he was very much in a state of exploration of his Judaism. The very last thing that he wrote published in his lifetime was Josephine the Singer or the Mouseful, and that was very reflective of his seeking and exploration of for salvation, particularly within his Judaism. I've read a handful of what Kafka has written, and from what I've gotten from him, he puts a lot of himself into these works, and a lot of it is allegorical for things that are going on in his own life. He may set things up, such as giving his commentary about the background of the carnival and or those kind of sideshows. However, I think that he saw himself, and I think a lot of us can see where he's getting at when it comes to seeing himself within this hunger artist in this piece.
Yeah, and usually we as English, as having a degree in English, it's you always taught, don't ever assume the author is the one telling the story. The author is the one who writes the story. But there are times the author is
You want to take work for their face value, and you don't want to either overanalyze or suffocate the message out of it. But with Kafka, it seems as if that is often the case. Like with the Metamorphosis, where the
multiple meanings.
Gregor Samsa saw himself as a giant insect or a giant vermin. That was the foundation of the piece. And with the hunger artist, he saw a lot of himself within this character, going through his circumstance, being someone with TB, someone who was...
I was going to say something about
someone that was dying.
Yeah, and that's how we made that one.
The world.
The protagonist in this story.
Yeah, how the world is just going on around him, and some of them are even prying in. Kind of like, I know that they had said when Freddie Mercury from Queen was dying from AIDS and becoming frail, people were just... You had the media and the paparazzi just prying in and...
well, that's their job.
They were just filled with curiosity and wanted to know more. They were hounding him, too, where... They were surrounding his house. They finally put out a message less than 24 hours before he died. It's very similar in this sense, where the media is not as overwhelming and as powerful, as armed with the resources that they are than they are today. It's that sense that the world is more concerned about their own personal interests than the well-being of the suffering. Kafka did have that in mind because he was a very well thought-out intellectual. This is one of his strongest pieces, too.
So I guess you would really have to know about the author to understand, because I didn't get that only because I didn't know anything about the author.
Knowing background information about Kafka is very helpful. That doesn't apply to all writers. We're going to be going over Seamus Heaney soon. He is...
There once was a man named Seamus?
Seamus Heaney, his works can easily be taken for face value and enjoyed for face value. This one, there's a lot of underlying meaning. Do we have any final thoughts?
Sad. A tear rolled down my cheek when I read it.
It was definitely a depressing read from beginning to end.
Kafka's works are either depressing, thought-provoking, or both.
Definitely both.
Yeah, that too. I think both is the better option. If you're interested in reading this and the complete stories of Franz Kafka, here is a collection. This is one of the...
No, that's a book.
This is one of my great aspects of my book collection. I want to read this from front to back. He did write some novels as well, but they were not completed during his lifetime, and he asked his agent to burn them. His agent decided to finish them instead and publish them. The writings in here were things, for the most part, he approved of. The longest work that he approved was The Metamorphosis, which people, they view it as a novel or a novella. I still see it as a short story. I think a novelette is smaller than a novella. I think that would be the proper way to define it. I'd classify it as a short story. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading. Hi there, this is Josh, and on the 400th episode of Literary Gladiators, Larry, Dan, and I will be discussing Mouse by Art Spiegelman. We will be revisiting The Complete Mouse, and we are really roaring and eager to go forth with discussing that work for you guys. If you like what you see, please support us on our Patreon, for the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. Thank you for tuning in, and for now, keep reading.